In this video, I'm going to give you a guide to the cards you need if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the February 2024 post-Phantom Nightmare competitive format. What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome back to another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Video. The release of Phantom Nightmare is going to significantly change how we play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the meta today, with powerful cards coming out like Promethean Princess, Bestower of Flames, and of course Snake Eye Poplar. These two cards are going to make it so that fire decks like Fire King, Rescue Ace, and of course Snake Eye itself are going to be at the top of the meta, and everyone who's not playing those decks needs to know what the best cards are to be able to beat them. So today I'm going to cover the cards that you need if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! This format, and I'll even explain why you need them as well. So if you're excited for the video, then make sure to smash the like button. If this video hits 250 likes, then I'll bring you an incredible new updated guide on how to beat Fire King post Phantom Nightmare. Also, if you like deck profiles, combo guides, meta discussions, and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos just like this one, you're gonna love this channel. So make sure to subscribe and help us reach our new goal of 7,500 subscribers. But with that being said, here are the best cards that you need if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the February 2024 competitive format. Let's jump into it. So before I get to the cards on this list, I want to go over a few different criteria, the first of which is going to be budget. I am not going to be considering budget at all as a factor when looking at these cards. There are of course going to be plenty of $20, $30, $50 plus cards on this list here. You don't have to play them if you don't want to. I'm going to mention them because they are definitely the best cards in the game and they're that price for a reason. But I am going to give alternatives to the expensive cards when I can. The second criteria is going to be that not every single deck can actually play all the cards I'm going to mention. You have to make a decision on which cards are going to be the most important to help you against a certain matchup or make your own deck more consistent. I'm also not going to be ranking these cards from best to worst or from worst to best. They're going to be placed in certain categories and we go from there and just cover cards in that given category one at a time. And I'm also mainly going to talk about how these cards interact with the 5 or so best decks of the format. Those are going to be Fire King, Snake Eye, Rescue Ace, the new Voiceless Voice archetype, and Labyrinth. Now obviously these aren't the only decks in the format, but they are poised to be the best in the upcoming format post Phantom Nightmare. So with that being said, let's start with our first category, hand traps. Whether or not you think hand traps are good for the game or not is not the question that we're asking for today. I think it's pretty clear that what they do really well is they stop your opponent from doing actions that you can't control on your turn 0, which is still pretty important. But right now Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a very interesting spot because for the first time in years, we have a brand new Reinforcement of the Army or Rhoda style card in the format in Bonfire, which allows you to add any level 4 or lower Pyro monster from deck to hand. Not only is this card incredible to boost consistency, but it can start a really big snowball effect. By searching for something like a Snake Eye Ash and normal summoning that card, you can then search for a Snake Eye Poplar, which can summon itself out, search for another card, and go off on a crazy combo. So to shut that combo down before it even starts, Droll and Lockbird needs to see play in pretty much every single main deck. Any deck that wants to play Bonfire really doesn't want to deal with Droll and Lockbird, but it goes a step further. Against Rescue Ace, there are certain hands that Droll can prevent them from accessing Turbulence, or if they search for HQ using Airlifter, for example, they can't then recycle their Rescue Ace cards as drawing is part of the HQ effect. In the Fire King matchup, if they start with Ponix to search for Sanctuary, they can no longer search and destroy a card using the island. Voiceless Voice uses both pre-preparation of rights and the new Saphira retrain to be able to search cards, but if you draw them on one of those adds, it ends up being huge. For example, if they add 2 cards with pre-prep and you draw them, they can no longer discard Saphira to send a card to the graveyard and search for another one, which means they have to find a new way to get it into the graveyard to ritual summon with its effect. And if they start by discarding Saphira, then they lose out on the 3+1 that pre-prep provides. Against some decks, Droll is a turn-ending hand trap, and against others, it can make their end board significantly weaker. Right now, it is going to be the best and most important hand trap to have in the upcoming format, so you're definitely going to need it. For our next hand trap, we're going from one that can be an absolute turn-ender in Droll and Lockbird to one that's impact can vary significantly depending on the hand of an opponent. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is one of the most powerful cards in the game today because of how good it can be against pretty much every single matchup. It can stop Snake Eye Poplar from being added to the hand and stopping the advantage it gains. It's excellent to use against Fire King Island as they can no longer destroy a card or search for another one. Against Rescue Ace, it can be used on the Field Spell, Emergency, or even Hydrant itself. It's amazing against Voiceless Voice because there are so many cards that they use that get them powerful +1s and card advantage, and it can stop both Big Welcome and Welcome Labyrinth as well. Ash Blossom's strength is really dependent on your opponent's hand because there are some times where you can just really shut down what they want to do and other times where it's just a minor inconvenience. But it is still really good against the majority of the best decks in the format right now, and is also really good against a lot of the tier 2 decks, which means it should see play in pretty much every main deck for the time being. And it also has the added benefit of stopping Triple Tactics Thrust from resolving. Our next hand trap is more niche, but still incredibly strong. It's going to be Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. It's insane, especially against all the fire decks in the format today. A lot of these decks will utilize Promethean Princess, Bestower of Flames, which has 2 different effects that can be hit with Bell. They also want to use Snake Eye's Flamber's Dragon because it has the effect to bring back 2 level 1 fire monsters, and when paired with Salamandra's Sunlight Wolf, they can bring back a 3rd card to the hand. The best card in Labyrinth is easily Big Welcome Labyrinth, which can summon from the graveyard and from the deck, and if you have both Ash Blossom and Ghost Bell, then you can shut down their entire turn. Just make sure to use Bell on the big welcome and Ash on the regular welcome. As for Voiceless Voice, it can stop Low, also known as Novox, from being summoned back from the graveyard after they ritual summon, which can turn off Skull Guardian's negates. Like I said, it's a really good card against a lot of different strategies. The problem though is that most decks right now have between 6 and 12 spots for non-engine, and if you're going to be playing a deck that has that space, you're better off most of the time putting a card like Ghost Bell into the side deck for certain matchups where it's going to be at its best. There are so many amazing hand traps and I can't cover each and every one of them in this video, so if you want a detailed guide to each hand trap and how they perform in the meta today, make sure to let me know down in the comments, but there are 4 more that I want to highlight. Nibiru is a great hand trap. It forces these fire decks to be really careful about overextending and can make them create super subpar boards. DD Crow is also solid as it can banish the target for cards like Transaction Rollback, Barong before it can search, or even the card like Promethean Princess itself. Phantasme is another really solid card because it can negate targeting effects, and Promethean Princess just so happens to target, and it's a link monster which facilitates the summon of Phantasme. Also, don't forget that SP Little Knight is also the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, and it's a generic link monster too. Lastly is Dimension Shifter. You really have to be playing a deck that can afford to play it in their strategy, but if you can, it's a really strong option against almost every single deck that we've been talking about today. Moving on to our second category, we're going to talk about board breakers, specifically cards that are really good when you're going second that are meant to help you beat an established board by your opponents. In my opinion, the next format is going to be one where it's more important to have good hand traps than it is to have good board breakers. Either way, here's some of the best board breakers that you should have right now. First up is Harpy's Feather Duster. Right now we've seen a really cool shift in Yu-Gi-Oh! To the point where that pretty much every single top deck is ending on at least one form of back row to be able to support their plays. Fire King has Island and Sanctuary, Rescue Ace is their main combo to go and set 4 cards off the effect of Turbulence, Voiceless Voice has the Continuous Spell and Continuous Trap, and Labyrinth is a trap deck, and so on. It may not be amazing against every single strategy, but it still is important to have. Triple Tactics Talent and Triple Tactics Thrust are both incredibly strong in this format. They allow you to play through so much interruption very easily. Getting rid of an Omni Negate like Barone for example, and then using Talents to take or to draw 2 cards, and even Thrust to search for almost anything from a starter to a more traditional board breaker is tremendous. Super Polymerization is going to be the best board breaker in the format, period. The only thing holding this card back right now is that just some decks don't have the extra deck space to play it. At the worst case, you need 2 spots for Muddragon of the Swamp and Garura, but more realistically, Predaplant Dragos Stapelia and Guilty Gearfried are great options too. Even Draco Quest should be considered. All 3 of the fire decks I mentioned earlier have no real answer to this card. Voiceless Voice is all light, and any end board with SP and Barone is a free Guilty Gearfried. I want to make this very, very clear. If your deck can play Super Poly, play Super Poly. I'm also going to highlight Evenly Matched and Cosmic Cyclone. Evenly can break boards if no negation is put up, and these decks don't put up a lot of spell and trap negation. It's mostly other forms of disruption. And Cosmic Cyclone's ability to banish cards like Fire King Island or Big Welcome Labyrinth can force opponents to play in weird ways. Moving on to the extra deck cards that you're going to need. Again, not every single strategy can play all the cards that I'm mentioning, but if your strategy can, it likely will be a good decision. That being said, I have 10 different extra deck cards I want to talk about today. So firstly is going to be SP Little Knight. This is the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. If you can afford to actually purchase it and actually play it in your strategy, you should do it in almost every deck. The fact that it banishes is absolutely insane, especially against these fire deck matchups. If you want an alternative, I recommend Nightmare Unicorn. Next up is Super Star Slayer Typhon Sky Crisis. Not all decks are summoning a bunch of 3,000 or more attack point monsters, but going through your full line and getting a non-target bounce to hand at worst case is still pretty nice. We then have Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder. To take advantage of Zeus, you have to be playing Xyz monsters in your extra deck to make it work. But the fact that it's a not once per turn or even once per chain, send not destroy all the cards on the field is insane, especially against Fire King, and is still really good against all the other matchups I mentioned already. Access Code Talker is up next. It's an incredibly powerful card, especially at breaking boards and OTKing because it can't be responded to, and is very easy to make with Selene. If you want an alternative, that option is going to be Boral Sword Dragon. Speaking of Selene, she's also incredible, especially because she can make a very easy Access Code Talker and make it at 5,300 attack instead of 43, which is going to be really nice. Then we have 2 different Charmers, Heat of the Fire Charmer and Dark the Dark Charmer. If you can make a fire or a dark monster, you should be playing these cards. They get big threats out of the graveyard and allow you to link climb very easily. In my opinion, they're some of the most important cards in the extra deck today. Next up, we have 2 Super Poly targets in Garura and Muddragon of the Swamp. I mentioned how good Super Poly is, but without an extra deck, it is absolutely nothing. These 2 cards allow Super Poly to be the best board breaker in the format today. And the last extra deck card we're going to talk about is going to be Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. It's just a really nice, simple way of getting rid of a really difficult monster to out. Having it as that break glass in case of emergency card is really nice. Moving on to some more generic cards. These aren't cards that are part of a specific archetype per se, but are mostly cards that are going to be used in the top decks right now that need to be played to make the deck at its full potential. You can absolutely play a deck without these cards, but it's going to make it a lot more difficult to play at the best levels. So if you want to play any of the fire decks at the highest level, you're going to need the Wanted package of 3 copies of Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils, a copy or 2 of Diabellstar, and 1 original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye. You can play without it, but you're going to be missing a significant piece that forces interruption, gets you advantage, and even creates what is essentially a 1.5 card combo. Pot of Prosperity and Pot of Extravagance are both incredibly important cards. So many decks want the extra consistency that these cards provide. They don't all see play in the top 5 decks, but not all of us are playing those decks, so the boost of consistency in these other decks are going to be immense. And the last card I'm going to mention in this video is going to be Soul Release. This card is so good in the upcoming format. It's searchable off of Thrust and can be used to get rid of basically an entire Fire King player's graveyard and even get rid of cards like Potential Interruptions that Labyrinth has too. And that is it, my list for the best cards that you're going to need if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the February 2024 post-Phantom Nightmare competitive format. Now let me know down in the comments what you think of the cards I mentioned, and did I miss any cards as well? There are so many amazing cards and I can't mention every single one of them in one video, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a pinned comment which will have a list of every single card that's mentioned in the comments that should be added on to that list. So make sure to check out the pinned comment if you guys want more alternatives to really good cards. And just a reminder, but we play Yu-Gi-Oh! To have fun. That means you don't have to play any of these cards I mentioned in this video. You can play whatever you want. As long as you're having a good time, that is up to you. But if you want to play in a regional or a YCS, you're going to be playing against some decks that are a bit higher power level, and having these cards might help you at least a little bit in terms of competing with those decks. And remember, if this video hits 250 likes, then I'll bring you the ultimate guide on how to beat Fire King post-Phantom Nightmare when it gets all the new support. Don't forget to join our Discord server, the link is in the description, and of course make sure to subscribe to the channel as well for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content and to help us reach our new goal of 7,500 subscribers. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.